How much do you have to invest to completely live off dividends? And stick around because the answer is actually far less than you would expect. I've spent countless hours watching YouTube videos and reading blogs about what it takes to live off dividends, and unfortunately, many of them miss out on important key factors such as inflation and taxes. Not to mention, some of them are just completely wrong. But why would we even want to live off of dividends in the first place? A survey in 2021 found that the average retirement age for men is now 65 years old. This means that if you start working at around 20, you'll have to work for about 45 years to be able to retire. The unfortunate reality for many people is that they will work their whole lives in hopes that they'll be able to enjoy a few decent years of retirement. If you're anything like me, the idea of having to work for 45 years just to retire isn't appealing. For many, the end goal of dividend investing is to one day have the ability to live off of dividend income. For me personally, I'd like to be able to do this far before the age of 65. While it's true that there are other forms of passive income, such as owning real estate or selling a book, there's nothing as passive and simple as living off the dividend payments that go straight into your bank account. With dividend investing, you can make a one-time investment and receive dividend payments for the rest of your life. Receiving dividend income could be the key you need to retire early, or simply having the ability to work a part-time job that you actually enjoy. Essentially, the magic of dividend income is that it grants you control over your time instead of being chained to a job that you despise. The problem that many have with dividend investing is that they believe they have to invest millions of dollars to be able to live off of dividends. And it's easy to see why people believe that that is the case, as that is what most videos on living off dividends will tell you. Let's look at the classic example we usually see. So when people calculate how to live off of dividends, this is typically how they do it. To start out, they need their monthly cost of living. Let's say in this scenario, it's around $4,000 a month. With 12 months in a year, that means we need $48,000 a year to be able to live off of dividend income. Now let's take a more popular dividend stock such as Johnson & Johnson. Their current share price is $162.60 per share. This gives them a starting dividend yield sitting right at 2.96%. So let's go ahead and plug that in right here, 2.96, and hit enter. And you can see this means the amount we need to invest to be able to live off of dividends is over $1.6 million. Investing that much money for the vast majority of people is simply unrealistic, and it's the reason many people get turned away from dividend investing. But the reality is we don't have to invest that much to live off of dividends. In fact, we can live off of dividends with far less invested than the Johnson & Johnson example we just looked at. To uncover the truth about the lowest amount needed to live off dividends, we'll be jumping into a custom-built financial model designed to uncover how to live off of dividends quickly. If you'd like to download the spreadsheet, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. The first thing people get wrong when they typically try to see how much they need to live off of dividends is understanding their cost of living, and like we already discussed, understanding inflation. So again, let's assume that our monthly cost of living is currently $4,000 a month. With inflation typically averaging around 2%, we can see this black line now represents our cost of living over a 30-year time period. So at the beginning of our 30-year time period, it's around $4,000 a month, but after 30 years, due to inflation, our cost of living will end up being around $7,250 a month. So the goal is to find a way to get our monthly dividend income above this black line and to keep it there. And we'd also like to know what the lowest amount we need to invest to do that is. Now, like we saw in our Johnson & Johnson example, the amount we would need to be able to do that immediately would be over $1.6 million. That's the amount we would have to invest to be able to live off of dividends right now. Now, the reality is if you're watching this video, you clearly don't have $1.6 million to invest to live off of dividends right now. So that means most people will be making monthly contributions. So what we need to do is we need to jump over to my portfolio projection tab, and we need to plug in some variables to see how long it will take for us to live off of dividends depending on our investment style. So the first thing we will assume is that we're making $1,000 monthly contributions that you can see right here. In this first example, let's assume that we're investing into high yielding dividend stocks. This is what a lot of people recommend when trying to live off of dividends, but let's see if that's actually the fastest way to live off of dividends. So let's assume that we're going to get a price growth rate of 2%. That'll probably be pretty accurate since higher yielding investments typically have lower price growth rates. We're also going to assume a dividend growth rate of 0%. High yielding investments typically don't have high dividend growth rates. Now, but our starting dividend yield, again, this is a high yield investment, so we're going to assume it's 7.5%. So once I plug in all these variables, when I zoom out, you can see we can project what our portfolio will look like over a 30-year time period. Now, the first thing I want to do is see what it looks like if we don't reinvest our dividends over this time period. So I'll jump over to this tab. And this black line here, again, is our monthly cost of living. And unfortunately, we can see if we utilize high yielding investments and don't reinvest our dividends, we don't even come close to being able to live off of dividends at any point over a 30-year time period. In fact, we can see at the end of our 30-year time period, we will have contributed over $360,000 to our portfolio, and this would result in monthly dividends of around $1,691 a month, but our monthly cost of living would be sitting at around $7,245. Again, we don't even come close to being able to live off of dividends in that scenario. But what if we do reinvest all of our dividends over that time period? Let's go ahead and zoom back out and look at that scenario. If we do reinvest our dividends, we can still see that our monthly dividend payments still don't pass our cost of living over a 30-year time period. If we scroll down to the end of our 30 years, let's see how close we got. Again, in this scenario where we reinvest our dividends, our total contribution would be $360,000. When reinvesting dividends, this would result in monthly dividends of around $4,400 a month, but our monthly cost of living would be around $7,245. So again, pretty disappointing that we wouldn't be able to live off of dividends utilizing high-yielding investments while also reinvesting our dividends. So let's mix it up and try a different strategy. This time, let's take a dividend growth investing approach. So what this means is we're typically going to see higher price growth rates with dividend growth investments. Let's stay somewhat conservative and say we see 7% price growth rate. We'll typically see much higher dividend growth rates with dividend growth. Let's say we see 9% growth, but the dividend yield will also be much lower. So for example, maybe we'll see a 3.5% dividend yield. Now, assuming we're making the same $1,000 monthly contributions, let's first see what the results would be if we don't reinvest our dividends. And if we don't reinvest our dividends, it's pretty clear to see that we're not making very much in dividend income for the first few years, but it does start to spike up by quite a bit in the later years. But regardless, at no point still can we live off of dividend income because our monthly dividends never surpass our monthly cost of living. Let's go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of our 30-year time period and see how much we'd be making in dividend income. We could see we're making almost $6,000 in dividend income, but because our monthly cost of living is now $7,245, we're still not able to live off of dividends. And again, keep in mind, this was from $360,000 of total contributions. But what if we reinvest all of our dividends over that time period? Let's see what would happen. And for the first time out of all the scenarios we've looked at, we can see at a certain point in time, we will be able to live off of our dividend payments because our monthly dividend payments surpasses our cost of living. So let's figure out at what point that happens. If we start to scroll down, we can see it's not after 10 years, it's not after 20 years. But right here, you can see this is where things change. In the 23rd year of dividend growth investing, we would be able to live off of dividends because our monthly dividend payments now surpasses our monthly cost of living. And here's what's crazy. This comes all from investing only $283,000 over this time period, which is radically different than having to invest the $1.6 million we saw with the Johnson & Johnson example. This goes to show the power of the compounding effect that takes place when you invest into stocks that increase the amount they pay in dividends every year while also reinvesting your dividends. While most people still believe that high-yielding dividend stocks are the fastest way to live off of dividends, the data is pretty clear that dividend growth investing does provide the fastest way to live off dividends. But there still is one more thing we have to discuss, and that is taxes. It's extremely hard to build an accurate model that includes taxes due to the fact that the amount you pay in taxes on your dividends depends on so many different variables such as country you live in, the state you live in, whether or not you invest into qualified or unqualified dividends, your income level, your holding period, and whether or not you use tax advantage retirement accounts. While this does make it hard to model out the exact amount of additional time and money it will take to live off dividends, it's probably safe to say that it will add an additional 10 to 20% to the total amount of contributions you will need to make. So while that news is slightly discouraging, keep in mind, as your income grows over the years, your contributions to your portfolio should increase as well, which in turn speeds up the process of living off dividends. For example, I'm currently projecting that I'll be able to live off of dividends in about 17 years. If you'd like to join me on my journey, then you can subscribe to my channel and keep up with all of my portfolio updates. You can also get access to the spreadsheet using this video and join a community of dividend investors at my Patreon page at the link in the description. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.